They say space is beautiful, infinite stars glittering like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. But beauty can deceive, because once you drift beyond the comfort of Earth, once silence replaces every sound you've ever known, you realize something terrifying: space doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about life, or warmth, or dreams. It's pure, cold indifference. It started as a simple mission, just a 6-month maintenance trip to the outer research station near the Kuiper Belt. The team was small: Commander Elena Torres, an astronaut with 12 years of experience, Dr. James Holden, an astrophysicist obsessed with black holes, and Lieutenant Sarah King, a young engineer who had only seen Earth from above twice before. 3 people, 1 ship, the Argo. For the first few weeks, everything was smooth. Data collection, equipment calibration, status updates to mission control, all routine. But the deeper they went, the more the stars seemed to fade. They weren't vanishing, not exactly. They just felt dimmer, as if some unseen curtain was pulling itself across the cosmos. Elena first noticed it when she looked out from the observation deck on day 47. The ship's lights reflected faintly off the glass, but beyond that, nothing. Not even the familiar constellations. "It's like the universe is turning its back," she whispered. James laughed it off. "Of course. We're just entering an area with high dust density. Nothing supernatural." But Sarah didn't buy it. The readings on her navigation panels were inconsistent. Distances fluctuated, signals lagged longer than expected. "It's like lights slowing down," she said one night, her voice trembling. "Or like times folding." On day 53, they received their last message from Earth. Static interrupted half of it, but one phrase came through clearly: "Solar interference increasing. Maintain position until further contact." After that, silence. No one panicked at first. Space communication often lagged or broke temporarily. But by day 60, the silence had stretched too long. Even emergency pings went unanswered. Then came the knock. It was faint, barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Sarah heard it first: 3 soft taps against the hull, like fingertips brushing metal. She froze, listening. Then it came again. 3. Then 2. Then 1. "Elena, something's outside," she said over comms. The commander frowned. "Meteor fragments, maybe." "Don't worry." But when she checked the external cameras, there was nothing. No meteors, no debris, just the dark, darker than any dark she'd ever seen. That night, they all heard it. Sometimes tapping, sometimes scratching, always faint, always in patterns that almost sounded deliberate. James insisted it was structural stress, microfractures expanding in the cold. "Sound travels through the hull differently in deep vacuum," he explained, but his voice lacked conviction. He started sleeping with the lights on. On day 72, they found the first anomaly. A black smear on the observation window, like oil, but moving. It shifted and pulsed slowly, almost breathing. Sarah tried to sample it with the external probe, but the moment the probe arm extended, the smear vanished. Just gone. Hours later, the ship's power flickered. Instruments rebooted with new coordinates none of them had inputted. Somehow, the Argo was no longer where it was supposed to be. "We've drifted," Elena said, trying to steady her voice. "Maybe gravitational interference from an unseen body." But James looked at the data and went pale. "We didn't drift," he said. "We jumped. Something moved us." Instantly. No one slept that night. Sarah began hearing whispers over the comms, not voices from Earth, not static. Something else. They came when she was alone, soft and cold, like someone breathing just behind her ear. "Sarah, come see, look outside." At first she ignored them. Then, one night, she did look. Through the viewport, she saw something moving between the stars, not a planet, not a ship. A shape darker than the void itself. Its outline shimmered slightly, like distortion in hot air, but it was huge. And worse, it was closer than anything should have been. "Elena," she whispered, "there's something out there." By the time the others joined her, it was gone. But the ship's external temperature had dropped 20 degrees. Frost crawled across the windows from the outside. On day 80, James stopped coming out of his cabin. He said he was working on data correlation, but when Elena checked the logs, he hadn't entered any new readings in 3 days. She found him sitting by his terminal, eyes locked on a looping transmission. "What are you watching?" she asked. He pointed to the screen. It showed the ship, their ship, floating silently in space. But the feed wasn't from their cameras. It was from somewhere else. Some external angle, as if another ship, or something, was watching them. I found it in the data stream, he muttered. It's been broadcasting since day 53. That's why we lost Earth. We didn't lose signal. Something replaced it. Elena shut it down immediately, but the screen flickered back on by itself. The same image, only now, faintly in the background, a figure drifted near the hull. It wasn't wearing a suit. They sealed off the observation deck after that. By day 90, Sarah began losing track of time. Sometimes she'd swear she'd seen the sun rising through the window, impossible, this far out. Other times, clocks reset themselves to zero. It's like the universe forgot we exist, she said. And maybe it had. They stopped receiving any measurable radiation. No cosmic rays, no background noise. Nothing. They were surrounded by total silence, not just soundless, but empty. Space itself seemed to stop existing beyond a certain radius. That's when the air began to taste strange. Metallic, like blood. Elena ran a systems check. Oxygen levels normal, filters clean. But the taste remained. The ship's lights grew dimmer, flickering every time someone approached the observation deck door, the one they'd sealed. James began hearing knocking again, this time from inside the walls. He insisted something was crawling in the maintenance shafts. Elena didn't believe him, until she found the footprints. They weren't boots. They were bare, small, human. She followed them down the corridor to the sealed deck. Frost coated the door handle. When she touched it, the metal burned her palm. Through the small window, she saw condensation, breath marks on the glass from the inside. No one was supposed to be in there. She ordered the others to stay back and override the lock. The door hissed open, releasing a wave of freezing air. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the external window. And standing there, facing the glass, was a figure in a spacesuit. But it wasn't any of theirs. The helmet was cracked. Inside, a pale, frostbitten face stared back, frozen in terror. It was Elena, her own face. She staggered back, gasping. The figure mirrored her movements, step for step, and then it smiled. The lights cut out. When power returned a few minutes later, the deck was empty again. The frost was gone. The logs showed no entry. But the burn on Elena's hand was still there. By day 100, the stars disappeared completely. Outside, there was only black. The instruments read, null, for every measurement, distance, velocity, radiation, everything. They weren't in space anymore. They were somewhere else. James cracked first. He started tearing out panels, screaming about the Watchers, and the reflection that breathes. Sarah tried to calm him, but he turned violent, claiming she wasn't real. That she'd been replaced. When he attacked her, Elena had no choice. She used the tranquilizer injector from the medkit. He went quiet, too quiet. By the time she realized he wasn't breathing, it was too late. They jettisoned the body, but later, as Sarah checked the external cameras, she screamed. James was floating outside, still in his ship uniform, eyes open, but he wasn't drifting away. He was standing, on nothing, watching. Elena, Sarah whispered, he's smiling. After that, she refused to sleep. She taped paper over every viewport. It sees through glass, she muttered again and again. By day 110, systems began shutting down one by one. Artificial gravity flickered. The food replicator started producing duplicates of the same meal, burnt toast, over and over. When they checked the logs, the replicator had no record of ever making it. They had stopped existing in the system's memory. Then the messages began, text scrolling across monitors in a language none of them recognized. At first just symbols, then English words began forming. We remember you. Stay still. Do not look outside. Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She went to the airlock, whispering that she needed to see the real stars again. Elena begged her to stop, but when the inner door sealed, it was over. Elena watched from the control room as Sarah stepped into the black. No explosion, no decompression, just nothing. She didn't float away. She vanished. And then, seconds later, Sarah's voice came through the comms. Elena, she said softly. It's beautiful out here. You should come too. Elena turned off the radio. She's been alone ever since. The ship doesn't respond anymore. The air feels thicker, heavier, like invisible hands pressing against her chest. Sometimes she hears Sarah laughing softly through the vents. Sometimes she sees James's reflection in the glass. Last night, she looked out again, and there it was. The same shape, the same void between the stars. Only now it was closer. She could see faint outlines swirling inside it, like faces pressed against a thin membrane. And then, she realized, they weren't faces. They were ships. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Dead vessels, drifting together in that impossible dark. Each one exactly like the Argo. Each one with someone still moving inside. She tried sending one last distress signal. No response, of course. Only static. And beneath the static, faintly, a whisper, "You came too far. The ship's lights are dying now. The emergency power won't last much longer." She's sitting by the window, staring into the void, and for the first time, she understands, space was never empty. It was waiting. And it's not the dark you should fear. It's what's watching from within it. Because out there, beyond the stars, there's no God, no heaven, no end, only hunger. And it remembers you.